Now, it has been said that I, Ginny Buckley, am a bit of a speed demon. And yes, I've got to admit, I really do like driving. But the problem is with electric cars that while they can be very, very fast, they can also be a bit emotionless. But Hyundai reckon it's come up with a solution to that particular problem. So, this is an electric car with an imaginary gearbox and fake sound that can pull 0.6 Gs of deceleration force. Does that make you want to get behind the wheel? Do let us know in the comments below, because personally, I cannot wait to drive it. And the rest of the Electrifying gang have got no chance. My name is on this one. You know what? If I was going to try and make a proper sporty GTI type thing, I'm not sure I would have started with an Ioniq 5. It is a large 5-seat family car with chunky proportions. It's not the first thing that pops into my head when I think of driver satisfaction. The standard Ioniq 5 is more cruise than abuse, more lounge than lunge. It's got seats that you can convert into a bed, for goodness sake, whilst you listen to ambient sounds like the crunching of snow in a forest. On paper, it absolutely should not work. But in the hands of Hyundai's N division, oh my goodness me, I think it looks great. But this N version gets some really tasty 21-inch wheels with fat, sticky tyres, N badges and some rather tasteful body kit, including a wing and rear diffuser. And it does look more sporty, mainly because it's lower and wider than the standard car. But you know, I look more sporty when I wear my gym kit, and that really doesn't make me any good at sport. Now, of course, what really matters with any performance car, particularly an electric one, is cooling and also aero. So there's a whole host of features on the 5N. Let's start down here at the front. As you can see, it's got that V-shaped bumper, which is there for cooling. We got air flaps, got shark skins with those air slops again for both aero and for cooling. Just coming around to the side here, you can see this really lovely, bright, luminous orange band. Now, that would normally be red on an N car, but all the electric cars are going to get this orange colour. So let's move down to those massive but gorgeous 21-inch alloys. Now, they're covered with a bit of cladding here again, just to help with aero. It makes the car a little bit wider, gives it a really nice presence on the road. Let's take a look at the back. You can see you've got the V-shaped bumper that mirrors the one on the front. Of course, you've got all the pixelated lights, the way you see on all Hyundai's electric cars. It's such a statement, such a trademark for their EVs, isn't it? The logo is in black, which is what marks out Hyundai's performance cars. And one thing this car gets that others don't is a rear wiper. I mean, goodness me, the standard Ioniq 5 doesn't have one, and it's about the only thing we ever really criticise about that car. So ta-da, it's got one. Who would have thought that it would have been the ultimate performance version that gets something so practical? In fact, making it look sportier is pretty easy. But in Hyundai speak, something that wears an N badge has to have the go to match the show. And this car really does, because it shares some of its hardware with the Kia EV6 GT, which Electrifying has already driven and did some rather silly things in. So let's get on to some of the numbers, because they do matter, don't they? Right, the 5N has a larger 84 kilowatt hour battery, which is paired with 2 motors. From that combination, you get up to 640 brake horsepower and just under 550 pounds of torque. And if that means nothing to you, I'm pretty sure that a 0 to 62 time of around 3.4 seconds and a speed that tops 160 miles per hour might well do. You'll be beating Lamborghinis off the line in this with that kind of speed. But what really excites me about this car isn't actually the speed. It's how Hyundai's N division have taken one of my favourite characteristics about electric cars, brake regeneration, really used it to the max. And of course, brakes are so key with not just electric cars, but also with performance cars. And the 5N gets the strongest brakes on a Hyundai to date. So you can set the regen on this to be 50% more aggressive than the standard car. Hyundai reckons that its drivers will be able to use regen, that one pedal driving, for 80 to 90% of daily driving and 40 to 50% of track driving. Now that makes me really happy because I just love one pedal driving, and that thought of being able to simply ease off the accelerator as you hurtle into a corner sounds like something I am really going to enjoy. Also enjoyable is the fact that that system means that up to 44% of the energy that you use on track is going to be put back into the battery. Now, nobody's expecting this to be the most efficient electric car out there, but clever little things like that make all the difference, and every little helps. Then when you get inside, there are more than a few clues to the potential of this car. I don't necessarily mean this gaming-inspired sports steering wheel with paddles at your fingertips, or these rather lovely bucket seats with illuminated N branding. Want proof this car means business? Well, you've got knee and shin bolsters down here for when you really need to hang on. And it will also read road signs to suggest that you put the car into sportier modes. You got it. This is a car that actually eggs you on. But the best bit for me is this, what's happening right here in the middle of the steering wheel. So you've got different driving modes here, but this is the one, this wonderfully named NGB button, which stands for N Grin Boost, and it delivers extra power to the motors for 10 seconds, and it just sounds absolutely fantastic. But I want to put aside all the driving fun for the moment, because what you get in here is actually still a really practical family car. You get that massive boot, loads of room in the back, Hyundai's brilliant vehicle to load charging, that fantastic 800 volt running gear which delivers super fast charging capability. This car is a sheep that has been completely transformed by wolf's clothing. It also comes with a choice of 10 colours, including this performance blue in both matte and glossy finish. Right then, let's move on to one of the most divisive topics about electric cars, artificial sounds. Now, we've heard electric cars with artificial sounds before, but in the 5N it's on another level. Hyundai have really gone all out and embraced artificial sounds in full video game style. So what they're doing is using sound to communicate to the driver what's going on with the motors, to help the driver understand what's happening to the car on a track, for example, as you're doing laps. And the sounds each have names, of course they do. Ignition is meant to sound like a 2-litre turbo petrol engine, which comes complete with pops and bangs. Evolution is an electronic sound inspired by a Gran Turismo concept car, the 25 Vision. And supersonic, well, that simulates a fighter jet, as you do. Now, I would play the sounds for you, but it's not actually that simple because each of the 8 speakers and the 2 subwoofers have audio engineered into them. Really, they work together to create a sound stage here in the car, and it reacts to what's happening and also to, you know, the movement of the car. So you really do have to be fully operational to get into the feeling of what it's like. We're going to have to report back on that when we finally get to drive it. I haven't loved artificial sounds on electric cars in the past. I've always found them a bit gimmicky. But actually, this is beginning to seem to me that they're here for a reason and that they're going to enhance the driving experience. Fingers crossed. So as I said, we've had sounds before, maybe not quite like the fighter jet, but what we haven't had before is noise reacting to revs from a gearbox, because the 5N has got a mode called NE Shift, in which you can change fake gears via the paddles here on the steering wheel, and the noise will rise and fall with it. I had to read that twice when I got that info from Hyundai. Yes, you can opt for fake noises from a fake gearbox. There's even more. The powertrain will also change as you change gear. It will cut torque, giving it a little jolt, and you'll get some synthesized engine braking. So it really apparently will feel and sound like something mechanical is happening. There's also a rev counter, and it will even hit a fake rev limiter. It is a completely made up 8-speed double clutch gearbox. There you go. And if that's not interesting enough, where I think it gets really interesting is the possibilities that there are to develop this. So the boss of the N division told me today that the potential for all this artificial sound and engagement is limitless. So customers, for example, down the line could commission their own sounds. New sounds could be developed and voted for in competitions and then delivered via over-the-air updates. What I think it's doing, which is clever, is channeling that fun, that collective feeling that you get from video games. And I think it's a really brilliant way of engaging with younger drivers and just showing people the excitement that you can still get from an electric car. But wait, there is more. It's got a drag mode for maximum acceleration and a race mode with sprint and endurance settings for track days and lap times. It's also got a drift mode in which as much power as possible is sent to just the rear wheels, meaning the car will skid about, just like that Kia EV6 GT we mentioned earlier. It's called an N drift optimizer, and it's very clever. It's a quite complicated way of making this car do the same things as a normal car with a mechanical limited slip differential. Clever, but pure hooliganism. Not something you would ever use on the road, would you? It's also got another electric way of acting like a mechanical car, and it's called the N-Torque Kick. It's basically an electronic clutch kick. Now, when naughty types want to drift a car sideways around a corner in a manual car, they might well do what's called a clutch kick. Halfway around the corner, dip the clutch, maintain the revs, and then pop the clutch back out, instantly spinning the rear wheels and making the car skid. It's really quite fun. So if you hold both paddles behind the steering wheel briefly on the Ioniq 5N and then let go, it pushes an extra blob of torque through the rear wheels to get the same effect. So does this make any sense at all? Actually, I think it kind of does. Look, price is all relative, isn't it? But at £65,000, we're pretty sure, this will be the most expensive N model in Hyundai's range, so out of reach for many people. But if you compare it to other performance cars out there, it doesn't look bad value. But I think what's more important for me is that this is Hyundai investigating and experimenting with what it means to deliver proper driving satisfaction and fun in electric cars. So have they got it right? Well, on paper, and from sitting inside and from looking at it, I think they may well have done, but obviously we've got to wait until we drive it. But I know one thing's for sure. I, for one, very much need a car with a button in it called NGB. It's literally been made for me. And if you want to be the first to know when Electrifying gets our hands on the Ioniq 5N, click on that little notification icon so you'll be the first in the queue to find out. And of course, don't forget to check out our other reviews, including its rival, the Kia EV6 GT. And if you haven't already, please subscribe.